out to be completely unreliable assholes.
Hello, Tim.
Hi, Ryan.
Hi. And hello, everyone. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever it may be. Good middle of the night.
Oh, I hope. Boy, do I hope.
Maybe you
that's
just
true.
finished watching the film we're going to speak about today, Inside, and you're going to listen to us talk about it at 2 a.m. because what else are you going to do after this movie? Anyways, welcome to episode 39.
Cry yourself to sleep.
Right. This is episode 39 we've made it to of our fair podcast show, Dismembering Horror. What is this show, Tim?
It's a show. It's a podcast show where we dismember a film every week.
Dismembering, meaning we talk about what worked,
what didn't work,
and anything interesting or noteworthy.
Yeah.
And we hope that we don't not aspire. We don't claim to be any critics necessarily, but that is what we do. We think critically about these films in hopes that it spurs you to do the same. And whether you agree with us or not, it's all good.
Yeah. I can't imagine you agree with us all the time.
No. This is just keeping the dream alive of just, hey, it's fun to get together with a friend or two or three, watch a horror film, and then you just talk about it. So talk about it with us. We hope you watch these films and you talk about it. So what are you going to talk about today, Tim?
Inside.
Yeah. I guess was that our trailer lead in there?
Let's watch the trailer. I don't even know where to start with this one.
Yep, we pulled from the hat, told us to watch Inside. We watched it. Here we go. Inside.
Oh man, I bet that was fun to listen to.
Yeah.
Just some music.
Yeah. For those at home, the tagline at the end was what she wants what's inside your house. She wants what's inside you.
Da 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 da.
Meaning your baby because you are extremely pregnant.
Oh man. Yeah.
Oh, God, the poster too. I mean, it's kind of inventive, but it's very Hostel looking.
Well, didn't Hostel come out right around the same time?
Yeah, 2007.
God. Okay.
Do you know what the one other 2007 film we've reviewed is, Tim?
No.
Narrow it down. It is not an American film.
Calvaire? No. Oh my God. It's not an American film.
Hera.
Oh! My favorite.
My favorite too. X-Day. Hair extensions.
Oh my God. That's funny.
So we travel back again to 2007, which is funny because it is...
what a year.
Yeah.
What were we doing in 2007? I was in LA working in a gay bar. Oh boy. Rough time.
I was in college getting excited for There Will Be Blood.
Oh man. I think my life was pretty lame right then. It got so much better the next year.
2007. I liked that year. That was a good year for me. It was the summer of Superbad. I was interning here in LA. Like it was the year before I graduated college and I was living here, interning at a studio, doing all that whole thing. It was fun.
Cool.
Living in Westwood and Marina Del Rey.
Oh man. I think that's the year that my apartment got broken into.
Yeah.
It was not a good year.
I'm sorry.
Oh well.
Well,
we moved on.
Speaking of getting broken into.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
What
a transition that was. Ryan, you have graduated to podcaster.
Well, what would you say this film was about? What was the summary? We like to start with the summary so you can plug into how we plugged into this film.
Okay, so the summary is Sarah, so pregnant, driving, which, I'm not sure that's a good idea, but whatever. her and her husband are driving. Car accident. Real bad. We see the baby from inside.
Not a fun car accident, guys.
The baby is shocked. Yes. We actually see it go, So,
Yep.
So, okay, Sarah, pregnant Sarah, car accident. Her husband dies in the accident. It's real bad. 4 months later, she's whatever. 4 months later, she's on the verge of giving birth. The doctor is deciding whether or not they're going to induce labor or what, but she's going to go home, wait it out for the night, Christmas Eve by herself, and then go in the next morning and have a procedure to induce labor if she doesn't go into labor. Which, let's just say, she definitely goes into labor.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean. So Sarah goes home.
She's got a buddy, a work friend who's set to sort of pick her up first thing in the morning, has the keys.
She is not happy with her life, and she does not want anybody around. That's essentially her state.
Yeah.
So, as she gets home, somebody knocks on the door, and it's a creepy nurse that talked to her earlier, who was a real creep. Mm-hmm. And then we spend the next hour and a quarter, I would say, of that nurse tormenting, brutalizing, all of the above horribleness, home invasion sort of getting in the house and making Sarah's life real, real shitty.
Right. They just want to know if Tamara is there.
Who?
Sorry, that was a callback to when the other home invasion movie we've watched was The Strangers.
Oh my
Pray
God.
at Night.
How dare you bring that up?
And both of those movies,
dare you?
The modus operandi of the killers is to ask if Tamara is there. Anyway, she does not do that. She just wants the baby.
Yeah, that's right. She just wants the baby. We find that out eventually, which shocker.
Yeah.
That's what she wants. She wants the baby. The nurse.
So
Did the nurse have a name?
I don't know. So the shorter summary, I guess, would be a pregnant woman is pursued by another woman who wants her child.
Oh, La Femme is just...
Le Femme.
Yeah.
Yes, we're watching Inside this is Inside, a.k.a. L'Intérieur.
Oh, that just rolled right off your tongue, right?
That was my Frenchlish. My Pepe Le Pew French.
There you go. Yeah. Is there anything else that's worth saying?
Bunch of cops show up.
Yeah.
That's kind of what happens.
Yeah. Well, throughout we get people showing up. Which is,
right. It's just a cavalcade.
First, it's the coworker, I guess her boss.
The mother.
Then her mom.
2 cops, and then another 3 cops, right?
That's right. I guess the 2 cops come first. Because when she sees La Femme for the first time, she calls the cops, they come, they check the house. I guess there's 3 because there's a woman and 2 guys. They do their rounds on the house and say it's all good and that everything's going to be fine and she should stop worrying and that everything's great and she's going to have a great life and not to worry and go to sleep and calm down.
As far as ones that are
perfect.
As far as ones that show up and stay there is who I was referring to.
That's right. So it's the boss, the mom, and the 2 cops. Well, there's 3 cops and what do you call that? Somebody they've arrested.
Yeah.
That they drag into
They're putting in the tank or whatever.
Yeah. That's it.
I think so.
Antics ensue. I mean, like the worst shit ever happens.
Right.
That's this movie.
Pretty much.
Fucking hell.
You got her killing her own mom. You got scissor action.
So much.
Well, okay. Right. Well, how would we rate this, Tim?
Oh my god. I don't know. I have like really mixed feelings about this. Even just this genre.
Yeah. I know. I had to think about it a bit for sure.
I'm telling myself this, right?
Yep.
Oh, God. Shit.
Even worse for you, Tim. Would you tell yourself to avoid it, stream it, rent it, or buy it?
Well, I mean, look, I'm torn between actually avoid and stream. I guess I would stream it. I guess. This is tough. There's a bunch of reasons that I would avoid it. Like if I was telling somebody else, I'd tell them to avoid this. But
yeah,
for me, I guess it's a stream.
I'm a stream too, because what always gets me in the end, what wins out over anything is curiosity.
Sure.
So if this is showing up on lists and people are talking about it, I kind of have to see it for myself, but I kind of never need to see it again and wasn't that crazy about it.
Yeah.
And anything that we're going to get into in our first section, what worked wasn't enough to push it over the line.
No, definitely not for me either.
Yeah, and that was mostly like, I guess, my sort of in summary, in addition to what I just said, was like, for this kind of movie, for how little was happening to kind of latch on to in a cerebral sense, that means you want even more, just, I don't know, a sort of right dosage of what's visceral coming out, and or certain stylized, things going on. Certain stylized things going on. But it wasn't enough of all that just to sort of elevate it. It felt kind of like, the CG baby you mentioned. I was just kind of like,
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we'll talk about that.
Interesting.
We will talk about it.
You see the baby react, how you put that. Okay, should
man.
we start getting into it?
Yeah.
What worked?
What worked for you? What worked for you?
It worked like a charm, Smith.
What worked? What worked for you?
So, I mean, to start, we have just the premise, the log line, which I think did work and I did like. Like, that's when you think, okay, what's this home invasion movie? It is about a crazed woman who lost her child somehow, who just wants another woman's child.
So that aspect, the fact that that it's sort of a discovery in the end, that the whole reason for all of this is because La Femme's baby was killed in the car accident.
Which I can jump ahead to. I like that twist.
I feel like we needed... I think that's good.
Yeah.
Like, as a story sort of point, that is good. But,
maybe it could have been better as a midpoint turn.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, it's something like that, but I'm not quite sure. But I agree, without just going into criticizing it, that plot point is good.
Yeah.
And maybe kind of what you were just saying, like in terms of something to hang on to, more of that could have helped somehow, but we'll talk about that later. I thought the setting of the whole thing and the what am I trying to say? The feel of things was really working well.
Well, there's a lot of, you mean all the style things that were going on that almost elevated it.
Yes.
But you're talking about sort of setting and color and
mood definitely. The mood, the color, the film grain, the sort of the ambiance of it. I was really into that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of atmosphere. They obviously were blowing some fog machine into a lot of shots and then like getting it to dissipate just the right amount so that it's like got that haziness all the time. I like that. What else did you have?
Well, okay. So what worked? So just in itself, as I said, the log line, the setup, whatever, great on, as a whole on paper, so to speak. It's the thrust of it all. And then maybe what you were tiptoeing into was this sort of what I have categorized as this sort of, yes, the stylistic, aesthetic aspects of
I
it.
guess. Yeah, that's
which I did latch onto, which did work for me, in themselves as being interesting or a little something to hang my hat on.
yeah.
So those were like as silly and kind of stupid as it was, the baby cam, like props to them for just doing it and showing me something I haven't seen.
This is such a weird thing to say, but it felt so fucking French to me.
Yeah.
And I don't know even what that means. But
Just to like embrace the idea of showing a little baby's, like fetal baby's reactions.
Yeah.
Like,
the first time we saw it, I actually was like, wow, that looks really good. And then the car crash happens and it like puts its hands up like it's like trying to, whatever, protect itself. And I was like, oh, wait a minute. But yeah, initially I was like, wow, 07 CGI baby looks fucking good.
Yeah, the first time looked good. And then it just sort of became like a weird cartoon, reoccurring cartoon character. But like that helped paint the palette that this film did have. It was one of the unique things about it that sort of felt like it could have been adding up or, was adding up, but not to enough for something great. But anyway, I really, actually maybe the strongest point I thought this whole film was the music. It was that perfect kind of like what I always try to almost like get at in any like horror thing that I've done where I'm like, I don't want it to sound like music at all, where this film, it did probably the best I've heard, and like I can't think of any other examples of just sort of having like strikes and stingers and noises and sounds like do a lot to build a soundscape versus anything sounding too overtly musical.
Yeah, that's interesting because it doesn't like stand out, which I think is good. And it's probably to my earlier point of just the feel and the ambiance of everything that was working because it created this kind of atmosphere,
right?
Without it being too much or too sort of on the nose. Yeah,
and it was those sort of level things like this that I think why I have to give it a stream, or why I tell myself to, is like take what it did have going on, even if it didn't add up in the end for me. Yeah. It's like interesting to see where they were going with choices they did make, to give it something sort of more artistic flair or stylish or whatever. Yeah. So the music, and that is a good point. If you didn't remember it, then that's a good thing. The main, what is it? La Femme?
La Femme.
Yeah, La Femme. I liked her in her casting, where you just kind of hated her. She felt scary.
Oh my God. The first time you see her, I was like, I hate her.
Right. You just said that. But more, it was sort of like, I guess what I want to get at, which I liked, and it was, again, like one of the other colors of this movie that was a choice I appreciated. She was like, it went beyond sort of, feeling realistic. Like at that point with the character, the way she dressed and presented herself and sort of the way she stalked our hero, Sarah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It almost felt like, it was borderline in a horror movie kind of thing.
Well, you know what I like about it? Because this is of an era of like over the top sort of in your face realism, right? Like we're going to show you everything and it's not kind of cartoonish or camp or whatever. It's like, no, you're going to see, the knife go in, whatever that, you know what I mean? That the fact that this character is kind of putting herself, she's a real person putting herself in costumes.
Yeah.
That idea actually, I think, helps to live in this real world of she's unhinged. Like she's a real person in a real world that is so kind of off that she is costuming herself to fit her psychosis, her idea of the world she lives in.
Yeah.
Right? And that, if you put that into a real world, is even more kind of upsetting and unsettling because sane, rational people tend not to do that unless the circumstances call for it. Like if you're a cosplayer, great, go live your life. But if you're just a woman, you know, being a creep, thinking, oh, I want to get close to this other woman, I'm going to put on like a 1960s nurse costume to go sit next to her in the hospital. You're like, that's off. Like something's wrong about what this person's perception of reality is. And so that's actually a good device, right? Like we implicitly go, ooh, something's up with her.
Well,
like
her
why
baby
she
was taken away.
Yeah, like why is she dressed that like in this almost costume version of a nurse? If she's a nurse, she's kind of a little like kooky.
Well, it's interesting because like it sounds like you're getting into that. It is something that worked in that for you. It's sort of when you add in a layer of viewing this through reality. But for me, like that jump was never made at all in this movie of like taking this in as any kind of reality. So it was pure, again, like aesthetics, just sort of like let's just put the choice of putting this woman in this costume and making her, you know, combined with the casting, making her appear and walk a certain way and sort of like drift into the darkness and sort of then add the scissors to her, you know, it sort of paints this certain picture, which I don't know. It's interesting. I was different from you in viewing it, where I never watched it through the lens of the repercussions as if this was a real person.
Yeah, so that's interesting because I felt like the setting and the world that they create right off the top, I felt was really grounded in like, yeah, this is just reality.
Yeah.
Like we're not in any sort of fantasy world. So when you put this character that's you know, off from that reality, you immediately go, something's up. And I think to me that's working.
I think, yeah, it's interesting. This will be maybe I wrote a note to sort of save this for our other section.
Oh, okay.
Because it's more like for what didn't work, because I'll try to maybe explain then, you know, what off of this is why at a certain point that reality wasn't sustained for me.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I guess one sort of
go
on.
No, so
Finish
that's
that
why
thought.
I'm just sort of like only thinking these things I'm listing in terms of pure like style and flavor, you know?
Well,
That's
it's
what
an
works.
interesting question because it's sort of like we're trying to kind of pick apart the intention of the filmmaker. And like I kind of took it as like it's a character choice.
Yeah.
And I think you're kind of saying more in the broader sense
It
of
felt
like
it felt more like it would be reverse engineered, you know?
Yeah. Huh, okay. Well, it worked for me in that sense. You know why? Here's why. I think I'm a little hypersensitive to tuning into things that are off in real life. Like when I'm out in public. And I think this is actually sort of funny that we mentioned this earlier. It's a product of working in a bar for a really long time as like a manager, is that you, or at least I thought it was part of my responsibility as like kind of the boss of this public space, not technically public, but you know what I mean, social space, to keep an eye on everybody and like be able to pick out when somebody's acting off, whether it be because they're too drunk or because they're simply just, you know, off.
Yeah.
And assessing whether or not they're, I guess in the most extreme version, dangerous. And so when you tune into, like you that's a point of, you know, importance for you to tune into. You start seeing patterns. You start seeing certain types of behavior that go, okay, like remember that person is doing that thing that you've seen before that's a little off
Probably
center.
things that are kind of hard to put into words.
It is more of this sort of like feel thing. It's like there was a woman who used to come into that gay bar who was, you know, just her whole kind of demeanor and like look seemed wrong and off. Like contextually in that space, I was like, she would always come in and I'd kind of be like, something's something's off. She'd like have kind of coats that were a little too glamorous for like the rest of her aesthetic, or like her glasses looked a little like not real glasses, like she had just snapped, like almost a costume. Mm-hmm. So there are these little things like that, and eventually it turns out, like, we realize she's a pickpocket, and she's definitely not like mentally. She would come in and out. She would have these sort of like lucid moments of conversation where you'd be like, you would never think anything. And then she'd like suddenly veer into talking about completely like, who knows what's going on, like dream type stuff where you'd be like, whoa, I don't know where we just went, but we're off. And she would try to steal people's purses. She'd try to pickpocket people. She would do a thing where she would put her purse on a bar next to somebody's tab that had been dropped down before the money had been taken by the bartender. She'd put her purse like right on it and then try to pick her purse up and the money at the same time. We caught her doing shit like this a bunch of times. So it's that thing, that sort of like, it's a gut thing that you learn over time to go, something's off.
Yeah.
And I just need to pay attention. That's a really long way around of saying that I felt that thing in their depiction of La Femme.
Yeah.
So,
right.
You know,
and down to their clothing choice.
Definitely.
Kind of
like when she shows up in that black dress, at first I was like, what are we doing? And then I'm sort of like, yeah, she would wear that because she's fucked up and off and like it feels wrong and she's wearing a corset. It's like there's some ritualistic sort of thing in her mind.
Yeah.
The world she's living in is like, that is the outfit you wear for this.
If that was like, the aesthetic again of that costume choice was like this was it of this movie, you know, for me, an element that was the it, you know, a style type thing. Like, I think a moment where all these different, let me end with that one. Because what else worked? I mentioned the scissors as a distinct weapon. Sure. And like when I think, you know, reading the description, it's like a scissor wielding, you know, blah, blah, blah. And it was great because they're the exact kind of, you know, the scissors that you can fit like all four fingers through like the whole, it's like real, like a full-handed scissors, you know, when you think of full pair of scissors. Whatever, you know, that just as a bad guy weapon. And
we've seen it a bunch. We've seen scissors. I think we saw it in Opera.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Definitely in Us. I think we've seen it at least one other time, too.
Well, it was that this was at a more pronounced level of like they are a scissor-wielding villain is accurate. So that I liked as part of the building of the it of this film, and then the distinct lighting we kind of already mentioned. Like she has that kind of main, I don't know, I guess maybe it's a European thing, but it's sort of like an area of the entrance area of the house that's sort of a larger nightlight function. You know, where it's like an indoor porch light that of is orange and then gives an orange hue to the proceedings.
Right.
That was another just kind of like, okay, you know, things that are pushing this towards something. And the sort of, this is what I was getting at. So the sort of moment where it felt like all these different unique things of this film were adding up to a specific moment where I was like on board for, it was somewhere when she's finally out of the bathroom after she's burned La Femme's face off. And it's like they're having, I didn't mean this as a pun, but they're having a face-off. Yeah. You know, they're having, it like almost looks like Mortal Kombat. They're facing off against each other. And it's like, you got whatever kind of maybe music, non-music I like is happening. You have the woman now who's had her face burnt off with the scissors. And now the other woman finally defending herself.
With her makeshift weapon.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you remember that moment? I'm trying to like, there's other stuff going on in it.
Yeah.
And the lighting. But anyway, that felt like, okay, here is full movie happening. This is all these elements combined to be successfully doing something that the rest of the movie didn't really do for me. Mm-hmm. But here it was on display finally. And that was the moment of the movie. Much like in Willard, the scene where the rats versus the cat, that was the moment of that movie. This is the moment, this movie for me.
Yeah. Yeah. This is, I'll tail off of that. I think this movie is full of moments that I enjoyed or thought were well executed in isolation.
Yeah, well, that was... I mean, it's almost like you can describe it the same way to mean totally different things when I say, like, this movie made a choice of being... Sorry, let's say there's two different directions. If you have a string of moments or a string of moments. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Like a string of sort of, let's say maybe like Mad Max Fury Road is a string of moments where you don't have like, yeah, you have really key scenes, but it's also kind of, it takes on its sort of inherent logic flow that sort of keeps you in line. It felt like this was being pushed more in that direction with kind of like, it was an interesting approach I appreciated to subvert, like when, if they're like, we're doing a home invasion movie, how do we subvert expectations?
Right.
And I think a way they did that here was to say, well, what if people just keep arriving
Sure.
rather than have be a total cat and mouse thing? Well, if we have the cops arrive, leave, and then actually come back, what if we have these two other people arrive?
Right.
And then they're all getting successfully killed off. So that...
Right. Those are individual kind of sequence. Each time a new person shows up or a new sort of, you're in a new setting, so to speak.
But like more to my point though, is that is also the structure of it. It's sort of like, it's a commitment to be like, the happenings of this film isn't sort of surrounded around these, or, built on these greater moments or scenes, let's say. But it's like, oh yeah, for this film, it's this 45-minute chunk of just sort of, this is all that really happens, which isn't that much. Or it's sort of just people arriving and getting killed off, and that's kind of it,
Yeah.
That's a choice that was really interesting for how to subvert expectations, I thought.
Right. Well, what's the alternative version
in
your mind?
That's what I was getting at too, when you have moments and moments.
Right.
It would be to add more moments where you have scenes per se, where you have... okay, here is the scene where in some sort of, by introducing a sort of like interesting new deeper conflict versus just she's stuck in the bathroom for 40 minutes,
Right.
Something like what if maybe, I don't know, I'm just spitballing, like if there was more of once her face was burned off, and how if that is okay, now is when she's disabled in this kind of way. Or what if the baby was born during it and we saw her trying to now protect it outside of her.
Yep.
Or what if, just different things like that.
Well, and I think actually a good counterpoint movie is Last House on the Left, where it's like, what that has that this movie doesn't have is sort of goals, right? We've got to get the boat keys, but because of that, we've got reversals because this got in the way or that got in the way, and obstacles and whatever. This is a different thing.
Yeah.
And, I guess I could say I prefer the Last House on the Left structure or writing style or whatever, but like, that's not to say this didn't work for what it was. It just chose to do a different thing.
Well, can we get... I mean, the only other thing I had and what worked was the twist and the ending, which we already talked about. So is there anything else you want to say?
So yeah, I guess the other thing is sort of...
Remember that thought you just had, because I want to go off of that.
For me, the things that worked did not work as a movie thing. They're not like... They didn't make the movie better. Or good, so to speak. Just the isolated execution of, I guess, kills or graphic moments, I thought were good. Like they were evocative in and of themselves.
Right, I agree. Sheer practical filmmaking wise.
Yeah, I mean, I guess really what I'm saying is the practical effects of this movie, like the injuries, the slashes, the blood stuff,
cutting, the slicing,
yeah,
the maiming.
all of those things. I'm like, whoever was the effects person on this, they fucking crushed it. Except for the baby part, but I mean the CG babies. But all the practical things, all of the gore was great, but that leads to a broader, I think, problem that we will get into right now in our next section.
What did not work?
It's not ready yet.
Seems to work okay.
No, something important's missing.
What did not work?
So, those things individually, I was like, every time one happened, I was like, oh, damn, shit, oh, whatever, great. It had the appropriate reaction. But after about 4 of them, I just was like, I don't want to watch this woman get beat up and brutalized anymore. It's too much. And it's all fair and good that those effects were well executed, but I just stopped wanting to watch the movie because it's too much.
Well, that's what I think. Yeah, that's exactly what I thought was.
And maybe that's the point, right? Like that's what they're trying to do with this movie.
Yeah,
but
I don't know. It's interesting, but yeah, I mean, I agree with you in that it peaked early for me. So then I was just kind of numb to the rest of it. Like, I should have been like freaking out and mad when she kills the cat, but instead I was just kind of like not in the movie. I'm kind of like, okay, well, here's when she's holding a fake cat and she's going to kill it probably here.
Right. And actually, that's funny. That moment was one of the first moments in a movie I've ever seen where I actually gasped because they had cut away and I had forgotten she was holding the cat. Oh. And I was thinking about something else and they come back and she squeezes it in a way. I don't think I've ever gasped in a movie like that. I went,
that sounds like almost more happenstance that you viewed it that way than the filmmaking.
No, totally. I don't think it was, the filmmaking per se. Okay, just as coincidental.
Okay.
So to me, this is the problem.
Yeah.
What we're talking about is the problem and why I just kind of don't ever want to see this and why I was borderline and avoid. And we've talked about this, like, yes, in horror, in lots of horror, women are getting brutalized. That is a common trope. But I'm sorry, there's a limit. Like, there's a fucking limit. And like we said, Last House on the Left did a totally different thing. And there are kind of like well-placed plot reasons to push that agenda along.
Remember how it's like in Last House on the Left, I pointed out how even in the scene where the two girls are confidently kind of like smoking the joint with the boy, like with the reserved kid, mm-hmm. like that in some way is saying something about an underlying theme going on, which that was not happening here.
No.
And actually your voice keeps popping up in my head, I think, with how to...
Oh, really, Ryan?
How to describe... Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of ways I'm going to put it here about what was not working for us in this film. It's kind of like, I think we've just sort of listed lots of ways to try to describe the same thing. But I hear your voice going, pick a lane.
Sure.
So you've said that before.
Yeah.
So what was it we were saying in the last section we were getting at where it was kind of like there's two maybe directions or styles. There's the more like art house direction, kind of like what I loved in Calvaire, of just kind of, it takes on this sort of like inner logic flow of like where let's say how this movie is 40 minutes of her in a bathroom and then just people just arriving, getting killed off. Like if whatever that sort of outlook within a film is pushed to the extreme, then it can coalesce into something, sort of greater about the theme or whatnot.
Yeah.
But it felt like it also was sort of taking the approach of being a sort of more like how Last on the House on the Left was, that style film of like scenes, we're saying, moments in that sense. Can you help me? I'm trying to like describe these two different approaches.
Yes.
And how it felt like a middle ground between the two.
In a way, I think we're kind of not arguing, but we're talking about taking a thematic idea in an avant-garde way and saying, I'm going to lean on sort of my thematic ideas and let that drive where this goes with the characters versus a more Last House on the Left, quote unquote, formulaic movie structure, where it's plotted out and there are distinct plot point reasons to move the story along.
Yeah.
And those sort of, they both work if they're executed well. This one seemed like it kind of had neither of those two things. It just was like, I don't know. It's hard to even kind of.
Well, this
it feels like it's floating in a nebulous world.
It's hard because I want to say that, like, it's not that Last House on the Left was just doing it the other way and that's what worked, because I think, like, those plotting things that you described happened as if they were coming more from a plotting place. I think they come more from a theme exploring place. It's kind of like the chicken and the egg. When you have a scene that feels true to the film, it's like, well, what comes first? The thematic question underneath it, or just sort of the situation allowing it? You know, the sort of where it's written from can come from either place and coalesce of its own accord. It's just a matter of making it correct.
Yeah.
And just so that was the correct matrix for, to use a screenwriting term from Professor O'Neill, who I had in college. Yeah, it's like the matrix is the what's true to the movie, everything that is true to the movie, you know, kind of thing. I don't know where that was going, except I was trying to say, I think look at it again from how Last House on the Left was doing things on multiple levels when this one was not.
Well, let's think about this for a second, though. There are definite distinct things in both Calvaire and Last House on the Left that help us to be anchored to kind of the world.
Well, that was, because of this one,
And this maybe didn't really, that was part of the problem. So one of the big setups of this movie is us trying to get in with Sarah's kind of state of mind and emotional state and the world she's in. So, like, we have a bunch of examples, right? Like, first and foremost, we see her kind of just despondent in the hospital when the doctor is doing the ultrasound. Generally speaking, the ultrasound is a time when people are really excited to see, you know, the health of the baby and see an image of it. And that's kind of a, you know, thematically, we think of that as like a positive or a happy time. But circumstantially, her husband's dead. She's been through this trauma. She's despondent. And even the doctor's kind of trying to be cheery about it. Mm-hmm. And she's just not even responding. I think he asked her like what she's going to name it. And she's just like, doesn't say anything. And then we get effectively that beat of her just being despondent 3 more times.
Yeah.
We see her with the nurse, who ends up being La Femme, and the nurse is annoying and she's despondent and not saying anything to her and eventually turns to her and calls her a twat. Great. Then we see her with her mom, and she keeps pulling away from her mom, the one person who theoretically is supposed to be, you know, help, like a positive, like, comfort. Yeah. So she's eschewing that. Then we see her in the park and she's looking at a little kid and she's kind of taking pictures of that, but she's still sort of despondent. And then this guy shows up and we think he's just a weirdo. Turns out she knows him, but that's a thing that's happening, right? She is not acknowledging that she knows him in that whole moment. So we've really, really leaned in. And then she says maybe 5 times, I just want to be alone, right? Then we finally get into the house. So we've spent all this first act shit just pounding away at this idea of like that she's in this terrible sort of state of mind. That's true to the character, but it's not really giving us much to latch onto to care about her. Whereas Calvaire and Last House on the Left, they do things to make us give a shit about the characters. We get to sort of go on a little bit of a ride with where everybody is. And then when shit starts going on, we go, ooh, shit, I see why and what these characters want.
Right. So our sympathy and investment in her as a character, I think that's exactly, I mean, what I was saying, pick a lane can be applied to this, where I want to say Like, yeah, when like when she killed the mom, I was surprisingly like not invested and like, so what? And so you just talking about it now reminded me is like, oh, yet we did go through all this what should be character setup, yet it wasn't effective for me in sort of investing in her as a character, I guess. And maybe that's because, I mean, yeah, the reasons of it feeling like it peaked early in a sense, but it's like it felt like it then switched into the mode of just where, okay, let's assume that setup work, which it didn't, for getting on board with her character or whatever, then that means the rest of the movie we're supposed to be on board just for pure, like, the situation alone should be what is investing us in her plight. Yet, so it's, those are the two things where it's like, because I don't want to just blanket say, like, oh, well, then it would have been better if we had given her more character moments, blah, 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 throughout kind of thing. I that's it. It's like the either or. You pick the lane. Either you have just this situation and we are tuning into her there, or it is more sort of like what the beginning was sort of setting up. It's going to be a kind of movie where, I don't know, we're invested more in her sort of, in a very movie sense, her thought processes and what she's going through.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Because there's like, yeah, I don't want to say, oh, well, we should have, I just wasn't invested enough in her that you think that means, okay, that means I needed to know more about her or see her reaction more. But then I always counter with, yeah, but, and I've done this before on the show, mentioned the Dunkirk I thought was great. And people had that complaint about it of like, yeah, but I didn't know anything about them. And I'm like, yeah, that would have ruined it, because I think Christopher Nolan was correct, and like just seeing human faces go through this situation was all I needed. And
but I think that there's something that is maybe necessary in our, how do I describe this? So in a way, her character's experience is actually the same thing over and over and over again. And so what we're not getting is sort of ups and downs.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the problem. So for example, it's fine if you set up that she doesn't want to be around her mom. But before her mom comes in and we're already in the thick of it and she's already like been brutalized and then she kills her mom, in between those 2 points, we never saw any sort of moment of her questioning or even considering the interaction at the top. So if the interaction at the top with her mom is sort of a like unpleasant one, or she herself has a emotional reaction to the coldness of how she interacted with her mom. So, for example, we could see her later kind of, even for a moment, feel a little bit of like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have been so fucking shitty to my mom. Mm-hmm. If we had gotten that in that bit in between the 2 times we see her mom, when she kills her mom and then she feels even worse, we know that she acknowledged that she was kind of being shitty to her mom early on. Yeah. And even if she's justified in how she interacted with her mom, I'm not saying one way or the other, but we never got this push-pull of her state of mind, her acknowledgement of the people around her in a way.
Right. So it sounds like, considering the setup, it should have been going more this direction you're explaining.
Well, I mean,
I was trying to set up how there is an opposite that isn't inherently bad.
Correct. No, I agree. I think that, I just felt like we feel an emptiness because her character is empty, and we never even get a glimmer of what the non-emptiness would be. Even in her mind, like, it could just be an idea of what it's like to not feel the way she feels, or a hope that she somehow expresses of that. Anything to make us not constantly be on, oh, she's feeling emptiness. Oh, now she's scared. Now she's getting brutalized. Now she's getting brutalized worse. Now she's getting brutalized worse than that. Now she just killed her mom, which is way worse. Now, you know what I mean? Like, it's always going deeper into horrible for her. And I think that we have a limit of how much we're willing to sort of stick with somebody.
It was interesting because I think at a certain point, I sort of plugged into thinking like, okay, so where this movie is going is it's sort of taking a person who's probably this is like the worst situation you could be in kind of thing. Okay, so then I thought that poses that
even at the beginning, like the
right. That's what I'm saying from the very get-go.
Beginning, before anything has happened.
That's what I'm saying. You take a character who's already just in the worst situation. Then I saw what could be an interesting movie, kind of like the premise promised, but didn't live up to. Of okay, what happens when you have a person in the worst situation already, put in an even more worse situation? How does that make them look then as a person? What is their sort of growth and reactions, or I don't want to say growth necessarily, what are their human responses to that? And that's what I think what you're getting at, that we just sort of didn't have. It was just sort of like uber specific situational. Oh, she's chasing her here, so that means now she's trying to get away to here.
Right.
Or she was just stabbed there, so now she's dealing with that injury there, Right. And that it didn't, she wasn't pushed despite all that. You know what I mean? I don't know. I guess it's what you were saying.
It feels too victim-y to me too, where it's like, how do I put that? Like she's just constantly being victimized, and because of how it's constructed, she almost doesn't really even have a way to fight back.
Yeah.
And so she's just fucked the whole time. And to me, that like I think in this type of movie, you need to have kind of a roller coaster. This is not a roller coaster.
Right.
This is literally we started at the ground, and the roller coaster is going into the ground and just never stops going down.
Right. I think
we're just falling down the whole time.
You need her roller coaster or, I mean, this is maybe what would provide that roller coaster is just sort of more of a unique wrappings to the proceedings. So to sort of go off of that, what I mean is that I think this is the first movie I've seen that truly lives up to the would it be non-clementure? No. The phrase torture porn.
Yeah.
Because let's say, what people think the Saw movies and Hostel movies. Mm-hmm. So Saw, you have this sort of central horror supervillain that's, the Jigsaw character, and he has this super ploy thing. Right. So that's why that's the movie. That's Saw is the traps. It's not necessarily it's torture porn. It's there's more than just going on because of again the wrappings of it. And same with Hostel. I kind of love that story of it's about rich people paying money and to experience killing people. Right. That in itself is a strong and is delivered in those movies.
There's some commentary on that about what it is to be an American, quote unquote.
Right.
In and the arrogance and the ridiculousness of American 20-year-olds,
right,
or whatever you want to call that. There's a broader commentary happening.
And
I don't know what the broad commentary on this movie would be.
Well, that's exactly what you're just getting at. It was is that she is just effed the whole time, and that's it. It's not. And
so if that's the commentary, we never really get any sort of catharsis.
There's better ways. Then I think then you should make it a movie about how things get progressively worse. Yet it wasn't like things got progressively worse. People just more people just sort of showed up and died.
Yeah, it's just a meat grinder. You're just throwing more shit into the grinder.
Use her getting. Maybe what if it was sort of more the focus on her and this other person, as horrible as it'd be with the premise, dismembering each other more and more. So she just becomes an increasingly bloody mess, which kind of happens. You could
mean
say.
The La Femme character?
Yeah, no, the main character, Sarah, both of them. Then
sure,
make that the focus, I'm saying, versus just sort of or that's your line you're following.
Yeah, if it's a tit for tat kind of thing where it's if you're constantly playing the who's got the upper hand, that only sort of happens in that final 10 minutes, and it doesn't really happen that much.
Well,
we get it a couple times.
I'm saying that's a sense of progression that the movie could have been conscious about and sort of been about.
Right. Well, and I think I think that if that were the case, where it's like instead of one person just being the premier brutalizer and occasionally getting, you know, little things happen to get her to slow down, if it really is a like, I do this to you and then you do this to me, and there's just sort of this battle going on. Mm-hmm. When we find out the reason that La Femme is there, that she was a victim of this car accident and she lost her baby, and that's why she's there, I think seeing the two of them beat each other up almost equally up to the point of realizing that would be a little more cathartic, because it'd be like, it is sort of the like you're beating each other up over circumstance.
Well, yeah, because
and
you can at least maybe not relate, but you can see where La Femme is coming from as far as like, this is the woman who took my baby, so I'm going to take her baby, rather than just relegating it to a twist.
And if they're both beating each other up, it sort of speaks to this broader sense of like misplaced anger and futility of the world. Like, like shit happens. And like,
it's an accident.
It is an accident. And these two people have just beat the shit out of each other because they don't know where to place their grief.
It's like,
that to me would be a stronger sort of foundation.
I think, misplaced grief under the construct of probably the most powerful force in the universe is maternal instincts.
Sure.
You know?
Right. Or at least theoretically, yes.
Yeah.
So, you know, there is a whole, so without those kind of threads to maybe hang on a little bit more, it just was watching somebody get their ass kicked in the worst way.
AKA torture porn.
They're already, you're kicking what's the expression? You're kicking the dog, right?
Like you're just, where the dog lies. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you're just over and over. I'm like, I don't care anymore. Like, I just want it to stop. Even
if it was just supposed to be an exercise in shock value, it lost its shock to me too. That's why I said I should have been freaking out about like killing the mom or the cat, but it was just like, it was numb.
Well, and it bummed me out because there are shots and like there are visual sequences and filming techniques that I was like, God damn, that looks good. Mm-hmm. It looks like I'd said at one point, I was like, the fucking blacks. However they did, like whatever method they used to color this, they got the blacks so fucking rich without losing, you know, the aesthetic.
Yeah.
And like, then when you get into the starkness of the bathroom and its whiteness and the blood of that, like the walls are painted green. And so when blood splatters on it, it turns sort of into this murky brown.
Right.
Like there's a lot of good in the execution of the visuals of this movie.
I think your butt, to finish your butt, I think what you were kind of
story?
I think what you were kind of getting at, was exactly, there could have been more done that was unique to the situation. That wasn't just, okay, more people show up and she's trapped in a bathroom.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, okay, so let's take a little bit of a turn away from why this movie sucked. I didn't mean suck, but why we were whatever about it.
Relegated
was
to a
the
stream.
Cop a zombie?
What?
Was the cop
what?
Who tries to change the fuses and gets shot in the head and then comes back to life and beats up Sarah, right? But right as they're about to have their, like, Sarah and La Femme, like, standoff, that cop stands up and his eyes are like black.
Oh, yeah.
And his face is all like drawn. And he's like just sort of violently swinging and clubbing Sarah. Like a zombie. He looks like a zombie.
I mean,
I suddenly was like, what the fuck is going on?
I think it's kind of like, you know, that ending A House of the Devil is predicated on how some people can survive like head wounds for a limited amount of time.
Okay. It was, I mean, I just was like, it actually undercut the standoff moment.
Yeah, it was crazy.
So I just was like, now we're really off the fucking rails.
Yeah, which was maybe actually part of what added up for me in that moment. I was saying worked. It's like, okay, finally this movie sort of, if it could do anything, it would be going off the rails. So I'm glad it was doing it.
I mean, if you could take what was going on in that sequence and build that out to the whole movie and the insanity that would be that movie.
Right.
Where it's like all bets are completely off. Actually, we're just in hell.
Yeah.
And like people are coming back to life and fucking being like,
which
if it was that, I actually probably would have gotten on board.
And that's kind of, I think, what I
then
wanted.
It's a metaphor. It's a metaphor for how shitty life is.
Well, it's a metaphor, I think, for how powerful that force of the maternal instinct to think of, like, imagine Sarah like releasing her wrath fully, or both of them sort of having a standoff that felt like it was reaching their true push-pull potential. Then I think we could have actually reached that level of insanity in a way that would have felt earned, you know.
Here's an example of a movie that actually I think does kind of what we're asking this one to, like what we could have enjoyed. No, The Descent. The Descent has all sorts of weird shit going on in the beginning, but essentially it's just we're trapped.
Both start with a woman scarred by an accident and loss of family.
It's sort of about grief, and it's about like trying to come back from that. And the first half of the movie is essentially just a spelunking movie, right? The pitfalls of cave exploring. And then it takes this turn into fucking complete hell, where there's these creatures and there's, you know, bone graveyards and blood baths and literal blood baths that she like hides in and all that shit. So us getting to see her kind of actualize through that insanity and come out of it like a fucking badass, we can get on board, because she's actionable, right? Like she's doing something despite the complete insanity and like despair of her reality. There's only the one moment inside that even comes close to that, of her grabbing the knife and the tube from the vacuum cleaner, creating the weapon and standing up like, I'm gonna fucking do something about it. It's one moment and it gets undercut by this weird zombie thing.
And that was the moment I was describing.
Right.
Felt like there was potential to build from in, yeah.
So there's, I guess, sort of that speaks to the broader, like, emptiness, I guess, to me, of the whole thing. And if that was the point, fine.
I don't think it was.
But, yeah.
It really did feel like they... Like, yeah, like, when I'm told this premise, I get excited, and then the movie that I kind of want isn't delivered.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. It can maybe be put as the most simply, to bring it all back, be put that way.
Yeah.
Didn't live up to the promise of the premise. It didn't pursue potent possibilities.
Yeah, so I don't know. I think we could continue to beat this.
Well, let's change course to things of note. Yeah?
Yeah.
This should be interesting.
I thought it was noteworthy that in the dream sequence of the baby jumping out of her mouth.
Oh, yeah. That was actually, I should have put that in things that worked. I forgot about that.
I don't know if I could say it worked.
No, but like adding up to that again felt like promise of a film that didn't end up delivering.
Yes, you're right. I agree. But that's why
Can you describe the shot for us?
Okay, well, so she's fallen asleep. She wakes up and she's kind of choking on something, and she falls to the ground and starts violently vomiting up like milk. It's sort of the white, it's, you know, kind of alien-esque, right? And it's a pretty, I don't like vomit or throwing up in it, well, at all. And watching it, I'm always pretty like, I don't really want to watch this. This one was heightened to a point of like almost absurdity. And then she sort of turns over and she's on her back, and her mouth her jaw kind of falls open unnaturally.
Yeah, like a snake.
And she's like gagging and about to throw up from her back. And then the head of the baby, the CGI baby, actually starts to come out of it and like pops up and is like, ah!
Yeah.
And then it's over. And I laughed for like 30 seconds straight.
Yeah, that was kind of great. I forgot about that scene.
But It's noteworthy to me because it's not actually working for the broader movie. And it's not working because it had a good I had a good reaction to it. But we never get more of that.
Right.
So
take that scene and then the standoff scene we talked about. Those are your scenes.
Yeah.
Make the rest of the movie from there, you know.
Make the bathroom shit 10 minutes, not 45.
Yeah.
If that, maybe 3 minutes.
Any other thing is actually
well, I think just in general, this sort of where this movie lives in historic, like film history, in this quote unquote new wave, French horror, new wave. I think there's a term for it. New French extremity or extremity. It's extremity.
Mm-hmm.
And just like why and where that all came from is sort of an interesting dive. Like you can just look it up and kind of go through. You know, various people have their opinions as to where this came from and what was motivating it. And whether or not it is technically torture porn or not torture porn, like who makes that distinction and what is that distinction, all of that stuff. I just think that stuff's interesting, but like quite a large conversation that I don't think we need to get into.
Maybe if we watch more over the years.
Right. But it exists, and there's a lot of literature on that, and people have a lot of opinions about it. Just as one quote, this is from the director who made Martyrs, which is on our list to watch, which I think is a year after Inside, and you know is banned in a bunch of places. Like it's apparently that, you know, extreme.
Looking forward to it.
But this guy says, my film is very clear about what it says about human pain and suffering. This is about Martyrs? This is about Martyrs, yeah. But I think this speaks to sort of the French New Wave thing.
Okay.
So again, my film is very clear about what it says about human pain and suffering. The film is only really about the nature and the meaning of human suffering. I mean the pain we all feel on an everyday basis in a symbolic way. The film doesn't talk about torture. It talks about the pain. And I think, I don't really know why that was what was in our collective sort of consciousness or the world at the 07 sort of time. Mm-hmm. I'm sure we could kind of pick it apart. But I think it's an interesting conversation to have about. This is the era of like going from Tim Burton Batman to Chris Nolan Batman.
Which I think is like historically from a Western perspective to get into it is pre-post 9/11.
Correct.
Where we'd been living in a reality as if there was no pain.
Right.
There was no collective pain because look at all of us. We're happy going to our water parks, you know.
Yep.
That's it. So to sort of then... when the planes hit the towers, be like, oh, we're all, that didn't come from nowhere.
Right.
You know, in a greater collective kind of outlook.
Yeah, and I think so you can kind of at minimum take away from this era of movies that people were saying, look at this.
Right.
Like, look at where... or the origins of reality, like stop turning a blind eye to the horrors of the world.
Right, kind of like, so Batman, again, as used as a reference point, that's why I thought of it. Original Batman, I mean, which I love.
89 or
the
60s?
89 one.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe the 60s ones too, but those feel like the beat of the parent's death feels like it's, you know, from the pages of a comic book. Mm-hmm. Of a certain kind of what we think of comic books when we think of comic books. And then The Dark Knight, you have a whole film kind of about him dealing with that is
right.
Batman Begins,
right.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so that distinction.
I think there is something in that and maybe an interesting, you know, debate to have as to the validity or the efficacy of films like this. And if there's, you know, again, like why I am on the fence of avoid versus stream.
It's hard
like, should we watch these?
It's hard
You know?
because I don't know. I think that is a better question, and I mean, it's an interesting quote, but I think it would be better saved for Martyrs, assuming maybe it's a better film.
Well, maybe, yeah.
Because I know you're looking at it as a movement that this film that we watched Inside is sort of looked at as a part of.
Right.
But I don't think it was successful enough as a film to sort of be included in that. I mean, it may be in the sense of like, where does it all come from? How is it bubbling up then?
Yeah, I think that's what I'm getting at is sort of the intention or the presumed intention of this these filmmakers at that time.
So then if that's the specific why the filmmaker is at this time, like and also to segue to maybe another topic to explore
you're
here.
so good at the segues today. So
is
proud of you.
The filmmakers, they said they were simply interested in the question of, okay, what if we just make it the formula rather than a man, going after a woman going after the woman? I'm just interested in that film. That's the approach. So then, as far as your question, it's like, well, then why do these two dudes think of that? And I think of that as a more, from a horror history perspective, which then again can be reflected on real life as to where we are at any given time in horror history. But the bigger question that brings up to me, which I was funny, looking at the Letterboxd just sort of reviews for this, and one person didn't bother rating at all. They just wrote in all lowercase letters, "Why was a man allowed to make this movie?"
I think that's a very valid point, and I actually thought initially that a woman had directed it.
I know, because one of the names was actually just a French male name.
It's Julien.
So two French dudes made this film about a pregnant woman, a woman who lost a child pursuing another woman for her child.
Yep.
And so, yeah, you think...
Uh-oh.
Yeah, exactly. That's the feeling that hits me in the stomach. Yet, what I fall back on, this is where I want to bring it into debate mode. Not that we are the authorities for this. I think this would have been a really good movie to have a female guest on. But I fall back on so if whether you're a dude or not, if you are interested in this question of maybe and this is exactly why the movie didn't add up to sort of much, anything very meaningful in the end. But the dudes were simply looking at it as an exercise in, okay, well, how do we make a home invasion slasher with this as the conceit? And I think anyone should be allowed to make any, thing that interests them for whatever reason, in film. So, but whether they were the best people for the job, I don't think so, as far as mining all that it could be and having an air of authenticity to it.
Right. Well, and I just to check, look to see if the American remake was directed by a woman, and it was not.
God, of course. And that came out just 2 years ago. Come on, guys.
Yeah. So it was...
Original was 2007.
Yeah. Spanish director and screenwriter and actor Miguel Angel Vivas. So... they missed again.
Yeah. But
yeah,
God, if there ever was a movie just to be helmed by all women that's this premise, right?
Sure. Yeah. Well, and that makes me wonder whether or not what is that movie? Does it exist, or are women no, fuck that movie? You know what I mean? If women filmmakers have the opportunity, do they say that's not a movie I want to make? I'm just curious. I have no idea, but I'd love to ask, the 5 women directors that I know and just be like, if you were presented with this, would you be on board, or would you be like, no?
I'd be so curious. Just give a set of women filmmakers this premise and sort of hear out their pitch on it, and give a bunch of dudes this premise, see their pitch on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But for whatever reasons, I think there's a lot more, I think it's definitely a part of it, but I don't know what else these filmmakers made. But I'm guessing, I think it's a part of it too, as far as why they may not have naturally reached the full potential of what you'd want from this premise.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
But I don't know. I thought there'd be more to say on that, but yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
But certainly not invalid for.
It gets a really high rating, this movie.
Yeah, I know. I think that's kind of was my fascination for going on something like Letterboxd, is seeing. But it seems like those people are literally in it, just like what you said, just those literal moments of this is a person getting stabbed this way.
This is a guy's face getting blown off by a gunshot.
Right. But I'm forgetting it as soon as we're talking about it.
I agree. Well, you can't win them all, Ryan.
No. Hey, but it's our job as you know what, we in the intro, we try to set up what the show is a certain way, but the language that Tim and I used when sort of first starting this podcast was we're looking for treasure, explorers, spelunkers, gold diggers, trying to search whatever we could find, whether they be nuggets, gems, jewels.
Yeah.
Interesting vintage pickaxes with some sort of historical, interest.
And there's plenty out there that, we haven't seen.
I know.
So
there's a whole lot, because, hey, this was episode 39 and we got a whole lot more on our list. And we're looking at the Letterboxd list today, a compilation of the 1,000 top horror films culled from a list of 40 different top horror films.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I went through that and I got to like 150 and there was 30 movies that I haven't seen.
I mean, we really hope that this episode could be more based on sort of honing which ones we do on your your input, what films you want us to watch.
Yeah.
Let us know.
Totally. Well, let's do some RecommenDEADtions.
Yeah. Okay. You know what? This will be a first for our show, Tim. But I have to recommend a film we've watched because, I loved Calvaire so much. It's another movie they're speaking French in, and we've referred to it a couple times today in passing. But people, like, as I just said, this is a podcast about digging up the gold and the silver or whatever. Like, for me, this was probably the biggest nugget we've dug up is Calvaire. Just my personal taste. Like, that was one of the few movies I've given a buy. Like, I gave Mandy a buy. I don't know, that could have been, I'll stand by that because of just sort of how successful it is and the unique place it takes you to. But like Calvaire, man, that's a real buy for me. It's hard to track down, but it's worth doing it. Watch it, listen to our episode, Calvaire.
Cool. Mine's Raw. Have you seen Raw?
Yes, I know. I saw it. I told you, we talked about it. I saw it as screening with the director and talk about female filmmakers take on violence.
Yep.
And
so yeah, for me I go if you watched Inside and you need a palate cleanser, quote unquote, as per what we were talking about.
Yeah.
Check out Raw.
I am developing a horror film, and it's a feature script I've written like a couple drafts of. That's very, very similar to that. Cool. And I kind of went in wary, like, oh God, is it just totally that feeling when you've been working on something?
Yeah.
But Raw was so incredibly and indelibly made by a French woman. Do you know what I mean by that?
No. How?
I don't know, like how you said the CG baby felt French to you for some reason. I don't know. There was just something about it. Like maybe it wasn't this, that it was in French or whatever, but Raw, it just seeped with that. Like I could tell it was
You know what it was for me? There's a scene where the two sisters are peeing on the roof and they just squat and piss. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh yeah, this is a different thing. Yeah. Right? Like this is not, you would not, well, I don't think you would really see that in the States.
Yeah. Anyway, this was, it was, after that I was reassured is still very different from the reluctant cannibal film, if that's the sort of subgenre, subgenre that I hope to make an addition to someday. Well, I think it's different.
I mean, not to get into a review of Raw, but like, I felt like I was on the journey with the girl. Like I was experiencing it through her, whereas Inside, I felt like I was just watching somebody get fucked with. Yeah. There's a difference. And so I think, and maybe that, is a testament to how a woman filmmaker can portray the experience of a woman.
Also just women are not, the filmmaking was way better in Raw than these guys.
Yeah.
Sorry to say.
Sorry,
These
guys.
Great.
Oh, man.
Is it your turn to pull next week's
I'm
movie?
pretty sure it
I
is.
think so, Tim.
Ooh.
What's it gonna be?
Something not French.
Okay.
Wait a minute. Okay. It's Japanese
Yes.
from 1965.
Yes.
An era we love. I'm not sure I know how to say this. Kwaidan.
Kwaidan, yes. That's one. It's also on those lists we've been looking at, Tim.
Sweet.
I really want to see it.
Oh, wait. Is this the one with the tattooed face on the
Yep.
poster? Cool. Okay. I have no idea what it is.
Great.
Great.
Well, let's keep it that way until we see it. I'll
Yeah.
see if I can
No, I'm
rent
not
us
gonna watch anything.
rent us the Blu-ray from Videotech.
Do you think it has like a Criterion or something?
I think it does.
Sweet.
I think I actually have. Maybe it's on the Criterion channel. I have now.
Awesome. Cool.
Great.
Well,
We're
good job.
working. What do we want to say here?
Man, lots of foreign films on our list. It's cool.
Well, I think that's good because it's like. Because that's half the. I mean, that's more than half if you just look at sort of.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's stepping outside of the whatever the box of U.S. horror is good.
Cool.
Otherwise, we'd just be watching like Nightmare on Elm Street over and over again.
This is okay. Not. So you can find us at dismemberinghorror.com.
At Gmail and on Instagram.
dismemberinghorror@gmail.com. And yes, that's what you meant, but I'm just clarifying. Dismembering Horror at Dismembering Horror for the Instagram.
Yeah. And then at DisHorrorPod on Twitter.
And you can find, Tim and mine's little bios there. I have a portfolio website, ryanmcduffie.com.
Yeah. And I'm just at Tim Aslin everywhere.
Great. He is at Tim Aslin, wherever he's Tim Aslining.
Yep.
He's at it.
I'm currently doing it right now.
Great. Yeah. Well, we hope you enjoy us. Enjoying us. If you enjoy and join us next week, you will enjoy us for Kwaidan.
Kwaidan.
Well, until then, thanks for listening.
And we'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye.